After a year of working from home by default, are you ready to go hybrid from next week?
Freed after 6 days, the giant container ship blocking the Suez Canal has been partially refloated.
And a frustrating morning for commuters after train services along the North-South line were disrupted for almost 5 hours.
Hello, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quaid.
And I'm Haryanto Diman. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Well, let's start with the latest COVID-19 numbers. 21 new cases confirmed today, all imported.
They were placed on stay-home notices or isolated on arrival in Singapore. Now, more details will be released tonight.
6 F&B outlets were ordered to close for breaching safe management measures. Thai restaurant Club Mao has to shut for 30 days until April the 18th for failing to minimize physical interactions between staff and customers. Club Barbary was penalized for similar offences. It's been ordered to close for 10 days until March 29th.
4 other establishments, Deluxe, Kiss Bistro, SK Karaoke Pub and Steamov Restaurant will close for 10 days for allowing its customers to consume alcohol after 10:30 p.m. 3 other premises were fined as well.
Are you ready to return to the office from next week? Of course, you know, Haryanto, you and I are not involved in this new exercise, in this new transition, but you know, have you spoken to any friends? How are they feeling about it?
I have actually. So some friends are telling me that, you know, they want to stay at home because they've kind of established a certain routine, while others, they want to go back to the office, although not for the whole week, probably about 1-2 days each week, because, you know, they just want to meet their colleagues. And this is something that is also reflected in a Straits Times online poll as well now, in which nearly 2,600 readers responded. Now, 3 in 4 who are now working from home don't wish to return to the workplace. Some said they're more efficient working from home. They're also able to take care of their family while working. But the majority of respondents said they get to save money because they're not commuting or eating out as much.
And for those who want to go back to the office, about 43% prefer to do it, as Haryanto said, you know, 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Most respondents who wanted to return said they miss their colleagues.
Are people's attitudes towards working from home really changing? Well, let's discuss this with Pauline Testron, Professor of Sociology at Singapore Management University. Hi, Professor. Prof, as this poll was to get a quick sense of how people felt about returning to the office, and 3 in 4 respondents didn't wish to. Now, outside of the poll, though, are you seeing a shift in attitudes towards working from home compared with when we first had to work remotely?
But it has been a year, right? This is how long COVID has been with us. And in this past year, all of us have learned. IT solutions stepped up, and many of us have converted, you know, comfortable spaces in our homes to makeshift offices, invested in a lot of equipment, and we've just gotten used to now functioning from home, right? And doing well, right? Doing very well for some people. So you can imagine that now, in the announcement that we now go back to the office, there's another transition here. We have to expect that we will require, you know, some periods of adjustment for those who have gotten used to working from home, and the flexibility that it accords. It must be quite disappointing for them to now have to realize that, you know, there's going to be some structure to their everyday lives come 5th April.
Right. Well, you know, some companies, in some cases, have had to incentivize the fact that some of their staff are returning to the workplace, like, you know, providing couches, conducive meeting rooms and so on. Prof, does that signal a sort of a change in power dynamics between employers and employees, with staff having been given more autonomy actually over the past year?
For organizations who have thrived and are able to continue business as usual, there's a strong trust in their employees, because now you can't rely on FaceTime, right? You can't rely on physical monitoring, and we've had to learn how to set tasks that are where outcomes and outputs are goal-oriented and deliverables can be seen, in very clear-cut piecemeal, outputs rather than clocking face time, right? I think this is a very positive move forward because what has changed in the past 12 months, I think, is we have established stronger trust with those who work with us, those who report to us. And I think it would have, in most cases, built stronger employer-employee relations. And now, if you have a very capable team working with you, you now know that you can delegate, without watching over their shoulders all the time, and trust that they will be able to deliver, right, the promised outcomes. I hope that what we have gained in terms of balancing, work-life responsibilities will not dissipate, and that we will continue to be able to accord flexibility to employees who need it.
Right. Professor, just touching on the point you talk about, work-life balance. Now, we are also, moving forward, we are going to see a hybrid model as well, right? A hybrid work model. But, do you reckon, are people and companies ready to adopt this hybrid model, say, post-pandemic, and make it the norm of sorts?
What I hope to see is we'll take the government's guidelines as precisely guidelines, and for each organization to then, recalibrate based on the needs of the organization, but also, the needs and the capabilities of the team, right? And every team will be different. For some teams, I think, you need to probably, returning to the office, to hit that 75% quota in person would be useful. For other teams, maybe not, right? Maybe we could afford to allow more flexibility for the flexibility to persist, because at the end of the day, I think there are three criteria we want to be able to fulfill. First, of course, that organizations' needs are met, right? Because organization must do well in order for all of us to be able to keep our jobs. Then secondly, very important, that employees' needs are also met. I don't think that we should trivialize the fact that in the past 12 months, all of us had to adapt to a new way of work. And many of us have found great joy, right, in the flexibility that we've been privileged with, and therefore would be very reluctant to go back to a mode of operation that, forces us to give up on some of, the very, very, invaluable returns to working from home. So we have to be sensitive to that. And of course, perhaps the most important is, the kind of work that we deliver. Whatever arrangement that we come up with, it should be the most efficient way and effective way of delivering outcomes, right? So this means that I don't think it will be a one-size-fits-all come 5th April. It will require some recalibration, important conversations between, employers and employees. And I think that where possible, to give each unit and organization some flexibility based on the staff strength that they have, right? And then moving forward, we can then all say that we have gained from this 1 year, and we have learned, more effective ways of marrying work with private responsibilities.
Right. Valuable insights indeed. Thank you so much for joining us today, Professor. We've been speaking with Professor Pauline Tay-Strawn, Professor of Sociology at SMU.
From next Monday, up to 75% of employees can return to the workplace. How do you feel about that? Well, let us know in the comments section below.
Well, the same ST poll also found that almost half of those who preferred to work from home said it was to save time and money, I beg your pardon, by not eating out and commuting.
And of course, commuting takes even longer with public transport disruptions. Well, like what happened this morning on the North-South MRT line. A signalling fault had occurred between Newton and City Hall stations at the start of train service and lasted nearly 5 hours. Today's incident is the second MRT fault in 2 days.
Well, the Land Transport Authority said preliminary investigations show that a software issue with the signalling system had caused the fault. An SMRT and system provider Thales rebooted the system as a precaution to fix the fault. The Straits Times' senior transport correspondent called today's incident the most serious signalling-related fault since re-signalling was done on the North-South line 2 years ago.
You remember 2 years ago, we spent quite a lot of money and time to replace the aging signaling system that we had with a new one. Now, it's been about 2 years, and this is the first, well, I would say this is the most serious incident related to signaling that we've had since that project. And we need to get to the bottom of it to find out what exactly caused it. Because this is a new system, just 2 years old, it shouldn't be acting up this way. If we don't, then I think all the work and effort and money that we spent in the last few years to change over to the new system will come to naught. Now, remember that this system actually allows for a higher frequency of service. That means trains are able to move closer together and people will wait less at the platforms. And we have not come to that stage yet. We are still running the new system as if it was the old system. That means with a 120-second minimum headway, and the new system actually promises us 100-second, and we've not even gone to that. And it's breaking down. So we need to get down to the bottom of it and find out why.
Well, in other news, private sector doctors here are unhappy with insurers of integrated shield plans or IPs for excluding many private specialists from their panel of doctors for policyholders.
They say the panels are, quote, highly exclusive, private specialists making up only 21% of all doctors on the panels, while IPs offer benefits like coverage for better class wards in public hospitals and private hospital stays.
Currently, all IP providers have their own panel of preferred doctors from which policyholders are encouraged to pick. Having such panels is meant to help the insurers manage escalating costs as they want to make sure doctors will not overcharge.
Now, the rift between private sector doctors and IP insurers has intensified in recent months, putting the spotlight on how recent policy changes have affected policyholders.
And these latest concerns expressed by private sector doctors are key points raised in a statement on IPs by the Singapore Medical Association, which the Straits Times has obtained. So senior correspondent Joyce Chiu joins us now to share more. Joyce, your story focuses on how private sector doctors feel about the IP insurer panels. But in what ways do these, exclusive panels affect the policyholder?
For policyholders, if you have a family doctor that's not on the panel, that means that you might have problems seeing him, because if you have a rider that pays for all the co-payment stuff and you go to a panel doctor, it's a lot easier. But if you don't go to a panel doctor, you might have to pay more. Your co-payment share may be higher, and it might be a more difficult process, right? So some people are saying that this is affects patient autonomy and your choice, because when you buy an IP plan, right, part of it is apart from going to better class wards, it's the freedom to choose doctors. And if you have a doctor that's, maybe your family doctor, somebody who actually knows you, you would likely want to stick with him, right? Especially if you have like a major illness.
So Joyce, that said, does this issue have a solution, or at least a middle ground? Right now, private sector doctors are saying how insurers choose which doctors to include in their panels is unclear.
Yes, the doctors are saying that, but they are saying that if they are following the MOH fee benchmarks and they have a good track record, why can't they be on the panel, right? So it's going to be a long drawn battle. I guess, the solution could be having more doctors on the panel, or at least not make it so difficult for people to see non-panel doctors if it's their family doctor, for instance. Right, so we'll see how it develops. There'll be more discussions, I'm sure, with the government and the association. But in the meantime, SMA, they're actually planning 2 initiatives. So one is to actually get the doctors to rank the insurers like in an annual survey. And the other thing is to actually set up a committee to collect feedback from, say, patients, from doctors on these IP-related matters. And they say that they will feed this back to the government.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Joyce, for coming on to the show. That was senior correspondent Joyce Chiu.
Looking overseas, Myanmar anti-coup protesters are calling on armed ethnic groups to back their resistance against military rule. This comes after 114 people, including children, were killed last Saturday, which was Armed Forces Day in the country. US President Joe Biden has condemned the crackdown, calling it, quote, absolutely outrageous. His statement joins a chorus of global outcry by defense chiefs from 11 other countries.
2 Australian ministers were demoted from top cabinet posts today following rape scandals involving government officials. Christian Porter was removed as Attorney General. Now, he's accused of raping a 16-year-old fellow student in 1988, an allegation he denies. The woman died last June, reportedly by suicide. Meanwhile, Linda Reynolds is no longer Defence Minister. She was accused of mishandling an investigation into the alleged rape of a young staffer in her parliamentary office, as well as referring to the woman as a, quote, lying cow. Both officials will remain in government, holding less coveted government portfolios.
The giant's ever-given container ship wedged across the Suez Canal has been partially refloated after being stuck for 6 days. Authorities said it's been reorientated 80% in the right direction, but it's still not clear when traffic in the canal will restart. At last count, 450 other vessels were stuck, waiting or headed to the waterway. Others have diverted to the longer route around the southern tip of Africa.
Now, before we go, Malaysia has paid Singapore over $102 million in compensation for the terminated high-speed rail. The payment was for costs incurred for the development of the project and for a further extension of the initial 2-year suspension.
Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.